Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Well, we all know how to digest our food, and we've done a lot of topics on that, but do we understand how to digest our emotions? That is a fascinating topic we bring today with Sonja. Sonja is a wisdom guide who uses Ayurveda and yoga principles to help guide her clients. Namaste, Sonja. Thank you so much for joining us from British Columbia.
Namaste. Thank you for having me.
So make us understand when we use the word emotional digestion, what exactly does it mean?
That's a great question. When I began studying Ayurveda about 8 years ago, and one of the things that I found when I would meet people who would really want to take on a lot of these principles around diet and lifestyle, and what was really getting in their way was not so much their diet or their lifestyle. Those were parts of it, certainly, but so much of it was unprocessed emotion that was definitely affecting their digestion. So Ayurveda does talk about Agni, which is the principle, the fire element that is responsible for digesting our food. It is also responsible for digesting our emotions and our life experience. So if Agni is not strong, if Agni is weak, it will have difficulty digesting the food you take in and also that fight you had with your spouse. So emotional digestion is the process of really sitting with, in the same way that we might take a cup of ginger tea to support our physical digestion. We have to take in certain practices that support our emotional health and well-being as well.
So I think that's a fascinating, it's a fascinating idea. So now we all know, right, when we are growing up, we go to the school as kids and maybe we are bullied or some kind of a trauma. I mean, there could be so many different use cases, right? Depending on where you're growing up. Now, when you're talking about the emotional digestion, and they could be unresolved inside our body because we haven't been able to figure it out. How do we resolve them now? Now we are grown up and we suddenly get triggered by, oh, someone bullied me or something that happened. What is the process of digestion?
Well, it has to begin with acknowledging that these things have happened. I work with a process of, basically it starts with acknowledgement, which is a simple statement of this is, I was bullied and I am being triggered by this right now in my life. And then you move into acceptance. Acceptance isn't not necessarily saying, yay, I love this, I want more of it. It's saying, okay, so it's a bit of a more of an understanding of how this has affected me. And then we move into the approval state. And approval, again, we have to be very clear. Approval is not saying, I want more bullying, I want more trauma. It's about recognizing that this is how my karmas have been played out. This is how my life has been shaped up until this point. And I have the choice now within that approval of that, rather than being in resistance to it, because that's where most people sit with it. They're in a state of resistance, and that actually creates more emotional indigestion. When we get into a place of this acknowledge, acceptance, approval, we can then make a choice. Okay, what do I want to actually do with this? What do I want to do with this? And that's where the power comes back to us. Because sometimes if we're emotions are like water, and they can be like fire or they can be like water, right? But a lot of times we get underwater. We become overwhelmed with emotion and we can't actually find our way to the surface. So we have to begin by just naming that we are overwhelmed. And that's the acknowledge part, the acceptance of how that overwhelm is affecting us, and then into the approval. It's amazing. It makes perfect sense that I'm overwhelmed by this because of this past situation in my life. And then we have choice. And that's where our personal power is. And that's where we find true healing.
Okay, so that all sounds great, but what is the process of, like, should I seek counseling with someone like yourself, or you're talking about acknowledgement of what could be bothering me as an adult, and then the acceptance and the approval part. What is the process of, like, should we seek counseling with the professionals, or should we do what? Like, is there some kind of a self thing that we can start doing ourselves?
There are a lot of tools, and definitely I do one-on-one work with people who want to go into monthly, I work weekly or every other week with people around how do you go into digesting your life, because it does require a really skilled guide, someone who's, you talk to a friend sometimes and it can end up feeling worse, because if that friend doesn't know how to hold you in that space, how to help you see what you're not seeing, then you'll end up walking out of it and saying, oh God, I'm never going to talk about my feelings again. So we have to approach this with wisdom. And that's what my work as a wisdom guide, that's what I offer my clients. Now, there are also many other tools that I share with my clients, or I share on my blogs, that, things like journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling for emotional digestion. And specifically, what I like is when people have a meditation practice and then they add journaling to it. So what I find is that the journaling aspect grounds people. They're in meditation, they're in this space, they're connecting with their oneness. And then they ground into journaling, they ground back into their lives by processing kind of the stream of consciousness. What is going on? You can learn a tremendous amount about yourself and the way that your emotional process works just from writing every day for 5 minutes. But beyond that, body movement, anything with movement, yoga is very powerful for this. I use a lot of dance, even just walking, taking a walk in nature. These things, we have to move away though from having a stimulus every time we do something. So if we're in a walk in nature, can we do it without listening to a podcast? Can we actually be there with the presence of ourselves? The more that we are present, the more that we can begin to unpack these deep layers of emotions that are holding us back.
Okay, so you talked about the journaling part. So journaling, has to be some kind of a structured, or like in the sense, like, what do I journal about? Like what I'm feeling right now? Could you expand a little bit on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. People often think, I have to journal, so that means that I have to be writing something coherent. I have to have it all figured out by the time I'm done journaling. And if we think about this as, it's almost like just narration, just free flowing narration of what's going on in your mind. That's all journaling is. We don't need to get anywhere with journaling. We don't need to have it all figured out. I've been journaling since I was 8 years old, almost every day. I still don't have everything figured out, but it's the process, not the destination. And that's what journaling is all about. It's not so different from meditating. We're not trying to get anywhere. We're just experiencing what we're experiencing and learning more about ourselves as a result.
So I would journal like my feelings, how I felt today, or something that bothered me. That would be the process of everyday journaling. Is that what that's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, more or less. If people are new to journaling, I offer a lot of prompts to them so that they can have some focus around what they're writing. And the best journaling tip I've ever had was, if you get stuck, like you're just starting to write, and it's like you just begin with writing the first thing that's on your mind, and you commit to writing and not stopping your pen from moving. I do recommend handwriting journals, by the way, rather than typing. There's a lot of research that goes into why. I'm not going to get into that right now. But if you are just writing free flow, whatever's on your mind, and it will surprise you how much is on your mind, actually. But if you get to a point where you stop and you're stuck, then you just write the words, I remember, I remember, I remember. And that will bring you right back to something. May not be the thing that you were focused on before, but it will bring you back to something that your consciousness needs to express.
Okay, well, I think this is great. What we are talking about is that we all need to digest our emotions, and there's a lot of research that also talks about, if your emotions are not digested, that could also lead to some ailments, right? Health ailments. I think there's a research.
Yeah, it's more and more becoming something that it's more and more becoming apparent in the things that spiritual practitioners have known for many, many, many thousands of years. Western science is now beginning to I'll use prove in quotes, prove that those exist, prove that there's a link between our gut health and our our physical health, or I'm sorry, when I say gut, I mean the emotional health, the digestive, the kind of how we feel, and our physical health, and our bodies. Absolutely. There's a lot of I would encourage everyone to look into the enteric nervous system, our very first brain, which is the nervous system that exists within our digestive tract. And it has more nerve endings than in other parts of our body that we think of as being the primary nervous system. So this is the part that we have to begin to look at. Like, we are animals at heart. And absolutely, when we feel, notice when you feel a deep emotional experience, you feel it in your physical body. How could that not affect your physical health if it's not tended to correctly?
I think it's a fascinating topic. We could go for hours and hours. This is a quick 10-minute session that we wanted to bring just to give introduce a concept of emotional digestion. It's so novel, but it is so full of research and science behind it that we tend to ignore most of the time. And that's what you are propagating and advocating, of not ignoring our emotions, as they are deeply connected with our physical body as well.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonja, for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for continuing to support us. We are launching workshops, so stay tuned, and namaste, and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Namaste.